Welcome into the OBR streaming network for a brand new edition of Things I Think I Know. My name is Brad Ward, and my partner next to me here is Abby Mueller. You know her well. You can follow her on Twitter at Abby_Mueller_. What's up, Abby? How are we doing on this trying week to be a Browns fan where everything is chaos around the Browns?
I mean, we just got a Guardians win, so I'm going to at least take that in the Cleveland sports world. Either fortunately or unfortunately, I am headed to Philly this weekend to watch the Browns play live and in person. So
Are you really?
Yeah, preseason, that seemed like such a fun thought in my head. Like, wow, what a good game this is going to be. So competitive. And it feels like both teams kind of hate themselves right now. So it's going to be a commiseration, it feels like, of two teams that are not happy.
You'll have to report back what I've never been to the link. They call it something else now? Did they add a name to it?
They might, but I feel like the fans still call it that. Like, I don't know if I've heard anyone else actually call it something different.
Yeah.
So I don't
think
know.
they might have changed the name, but
Maybe.
anyways, never been there, but heard it's a very hostile place.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm interested to hear what you say when you get back.
I know. I'm going to be with mostly Philly fans, so I feel like I'll have a layer of protection in that. But
for sure.
It'll be interesting just in terms of the mindset, I think, of both fan bases right now. I don't know if that'll maybe make things easier on me, that like it's not like two really competitive teams that are trying to be in the playoffs. I feel like that makes it almost worse, where now it's just kind of like, if someone says the Browns suck, I'll be like, yeah, no, they do.
No doubt. Yeah. Browns are 1-4. The crazy thing, Abby, is, of all years for the division to be like this, you've got 3-2 and 3-2 at the top with the Ravens and Steelers. And I don't really think like we know what the Steelers are yet. I mean, do you think they're going to play Russell Wilson?
Gosh, I feel like they're going to stick with Fields. I don't think they can go back to that right now. But I mean, the interesting thing for them is like their offense has not been that great in general, and the defense has really carried them through. So I feel like if they continue to ride like that, they can still be a above 500 team with either Russ or Justin Fields. But I think they got to continue with Fields at this point.
It's a weird situation because it's like he's getting healthy like he's the starter and acting like he's the starter.
Wearing eye black in his, media availability again. So
he's such a douchebag. It's so bad. But yeah, I said before he went, I was like, how is he going to fit in that locker room, in that culture of all cultures? Because he's like the opposite of that, But we'll see. I don't know. I think they might think they can do better offensively and maybe give him a shot at some point. Probably depends on how they do in the coming weeks. I mean, all the AFC North team schedules are brutal.
Yeah.
I mean, the Bengals are playing amazing offensive football, terrible defensive football, and they're still 1-4. Like they're the opposite of us.
Yeah, the total number of points they've lost by is like so small if you total it up from all of their games. I forget what the number was, but I heard someone say it on something I was watching earlier, compared to us getting kind of like crushed by teams. So it is funny sitting there with the same record as them, but I think the mindset is so different.
Yeah, it's not even close. Like Burrow's on fire, and they're still losing. It's just crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, the best division in the NFL, 1-4, 1-4, 3-2, 3-2. I mean, if the Browns were playing any better, Abby, I would say they still have a chance. Like you can still dig your way out of this. It's just what we've seen as a product on the field is so far from hope.
Yeah.
It's really hard to conjure up like a scenario that you can feel like there's any chance.
Yeah.
Do you Well, let's do this. It's things I think I know. I'm getting way off topic already. Fire it up after the Guardians game. I know. So we're just talking. Abby, what's your thing you think you know tonight? As we head into a football weekend here.
Yeah, so obviously talking quarterback because it's kind of hard to talk about anything else until we get some direction or like feeling of resolution about where this team is going with the quarterback position. And obviously lots of talk about like should they be benching him and drafting a quarterback next year? Like that has become the new conversation. And I am not feeling super forced into taking a quarterback in this specific draft. And that has nothing to do with Deshaun Watson specifically. I think, regardless, he should be benched at this point in time. But if they're moving forward with AB and Stefanski and saying, we still believe in you too, we want you to have full control of this organization, I want them to have a shot at getting a QB that they really love and believe in. That might have also already happened with Watson. That could have been there. Oh, we love and believe in this quarterback and didn't work out. But in terms of a draft and develop, they haven't had the chance to do that, on a bigger scale with like a first round draft pick. Obviously, they drafted DTR and have worked on developing him, but that's a totally different conversation. I don't want to force them to take a quarterback in a draft if they don't absolutely love that quarterback. And I think a potential route for the Browns would be to use a bridge quarterback like a Jameis or someone, in that realm of quarterback that could carry them over another year or maybe 2 years until they land in a spot in the draft where they have a quarterback that they love and really want to take and develop and move forward with. Because I just think we could get into a cycle of just like drafting these quarterbacks that they're not obsessed with. And then we kind of are left in the same position time after time of benching a guy, trying to draft another guy, doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, it's a vicious cycle, right? Trying to find a quarterback haunted the Browns for 2.5 decades, right?
Yeah.
So, or 2 decades, really. And yeah, so the thing about that, I like your thought there. The thing about this is like, so Stefanski is the key to this for me. Like,
Yep.
what he's doing right now and continuing to play Watson, and I'll bring up kind of why I think he's partially to blame in a second, and it's not really Pete wrote about this, and I believe what he said to be true about the situation with the Haslams, because if you watch anything nationally, they're like it. I don't know if you've watched it all. I'm sure you've seen the clips, but
Oh yeah,
Sims and anybody, Florio, Warner, all these people are weighing in and they're all blaming not Stefanski, they're blaming the front office, or they'll point to ownership, saying they're the ones that are dictating that Watson not be sad at this point. Which, from their perspective, a national perspective, I get it, because common sense would tell you Kevin Stefanski, I mean, the tape doesn't lie. If you watch the film, it's plain as day. We talked about it before the show. The data is there. The data is in. There's quality data showing you how bad this guy is, right?
Yep.
If Stefanski can survive this somehow, then that's a huge advantage, because we've seen him take quarterbacks, reclamation projects, Jacoby Brissett, whatever, and make them successful. So your thing you think I think is correct, because you could find a guy that he could make successful and make you potentially competitive.
Yeah. I mean, look at what the Vikings are doing right now, not to butt in, but like using Sam Darnold and being so competitive that way. Stefanski could absolutely do something like that with a similar type of quarterback.
Exactly. Geno Smith reclamation project, right? That worked out. Like, there's guys I'm sure that he likes around the league that he could be like, I can work with this guy in my offense. And if you don't think the guy is in this draft, then I think you don't force it.
Yeah.
And you have to wait, right? I don't know if the guy's in this draft or not. Uh,
Yeah.
it's a weird class, right? We don't really know yet. I do have some interest in Cam Ward a little bit. I think Shador Sanders would be a clown show that the Browns can't handle, and I don't even know if Dion would let that happen
Yeah.
at this point.
Yeah, Dion
He's
said
already
some very specific words about like, I'm not letting him go to every place. Like
right.
and I don't know if the Browns would be very desirable right now for him. So
Yeah, and if you're the Browns, I don't think you want Dion around the organization every day,
true.
like his personality weighing in on every game. Like
Yeah.
that's just another disaster waiting to happen, right? Like
We don't do well with dads of players on our
no,
team. So I
no.
don't know if we need more of that.
Elijah Moore's dead this year.
Yeah.
OBJ.
OBJ. It's a history repeating itself.
It is. So I think you're right. I think they shouldn't force it. Once you're past the point of no return this year, like once you're out of it, I think you got to go to DTR.
Mm-hmm.
As long as it's not going to damage him,
Mm-hmm.
and get him as much game experience as you can, and try to see what you really have there because he's developed well. I mean, he looked really good in the preseason. Again, I know it's preseason, but like, I think he's a guy they like. He's played a lot of football. I think you got to continue to develop him. At least then you have like another shot at a guy on a rookie deal. So once the games don't really matter anymore, I think it's his show, right?
Fair.
You also want to see what you have in Jameis because he could be that reclamation project.
Yeah.
The thing is, like, okay, so I don't get it, Abby. Like, why haven't they set him down yet? Like, I don't understand. Like, it seems like Kevin would have already set him down. But then you go, why would, like, okay, so it's not another force keeping him out there, right? Does Jimmy not want to give in? Well, what it's sunk cost fallacy, right? So they should understand that him and Barry, they're smart businessmen, right?
Mhm.
Well, at least Barry is for sure.
Yeah.
Haslam, maybe.
Debatable.
Yeah. But a businessman nonetheless, and
Yep.
would understand the concept there. And he is to Pete's point here, is most concerned probably about the dome in Brook Park. Like that's job one for him right now. That's his legacy, right?
Mhm.
So keeping Deshaun on the field at this point only hurts him. Like, can you imagine them coming home week 7 if they haven't benched
Oh,
him yet? If they try to start him at home in week 7, can you imagine what that's going to be like?
this is what I've been saying for the last week. I'm like, one bad play when they're home against the Bengals after if they lose to the Eagles and one bad play against the Bengals, like people are going to throw things. It is going to be a hostile environment.
I can't even imagine it. Yes, I think people will throw things on the field. It will be
Yeah.
ugly. It will be embarrassing. It's a recipe for a disaster. I mean, it could happen in the pregame, Abby. Like if
Yeah.
he goes out and puts up like just as bad of a game. I mean, the only thing that would even resemble non-chaos before the game even starts that I can imagine is if they win this weekend.
Yeah.
And even that, I don't know if that's enough.
Yeah.
Because I can't stand watching him.
Yeah.
I can't imagine any other fans. I know he has apologists, but like the numbers are in, right? Like the film is there. He's not ready to throw. He doesn't get it out on time. He drops his eyes. It's all bad. He doesn't get through his progressions.
Yeah.
He's creating more sacks than even the offensive line is letting in, and the offensive line is not good. But like the numbers today, I read clean pockets, 14th most clean pockets in
Yeah.
the NFL.
He's
That's
running
not.
into danger repeatedly.
And like watching him when they were in the red zone, last week, taking like that slow 7-step drop where he's nonchalantly kind of dropping back and hopping, and he's not even ready to throw. Jerry Judy's wide open in the end zone. He's got the ball down at his waist. He's not even ready to throw at the top of his drop half the time. I don't get it. Like,
Yeah.
And Kevin sees this, right? So here's Pete's point of why it's not ownership to the national, perspective, or everybody that thinks that it's crazy that it is Stefanski's decision.
Yeah.
If Stefanski was like, I'm the coach, I get to decide, and no doubt, I think we probably agree, the head coach should have all say on who plays, right?
Yep.
GM, like Parcells said back in the day, GM does the shopping, the grocery shopping, coach cooks the dinner, right?
Yep.
And he decides who plays. That should be without question, right? It's not always that way because you have meddling owners and you have investment and stuff like this. But you're in a situation here where, because of the locker room, out of respect for the other 52 guys, he no longer gives you the best chance to win, and that's obvious. So how are you still starting him? And how can you face your team knowing that and try to get them ready to play a game when it's so clear to everyone that he doesn't give you the best chance to win? So that points to another factor, ownership. Well, at this point, ownership keeping him on the field is just making them more of an enemy, which is a deterrent of what ultimately they want, which is to build the dome, and they need public approval for that. Mm-hmm. So by the longer he's on the field, the more people are going to hate the Haslams, and the less chance they are going to have to pass any kind of a thing that they need to pass to get a public funds for Brook Park.
Yeah.
So it doesn't help them. Barry, maybe? Like, do they think he can turn it around still? I don't know. But if Kevin said, it's my decision, I'm not playing him, he doesn't give us our best chance to win. He's already got an extension. We know it's 4 years long. It's probably around like $50 million total, 40, 50, right? Mm-hmm. It's guaranteed. What's the worst they can do to him? They can say, play him or we'll fire you. If he says, okay, then you're going to have to fire me because I'm going to play him, he's a hero to everybody in the NFL. And he probably gets the next open NFL job available.
Yeah.
So why would you, to me, that's enough power and leverage for me to look at Kevin and be like, why? Why haven't you made the move yet?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like everything you just said is why I'm having such a hard time understanding why he won't do it. I think the national media thinks it is Jimmy and ownership more because of the history of the Browns. Like, if you're not in the weeds with the team as much right now, you might not realize that he has been more hands-off in recent years and hasn't been as involved in the day-to-day decisions that the team is making. So I'm in agreement. I don't think, I don't even think that when they made the move for Watson, it was all Jimmy. A lot of people were like, oh yeah, that was just Jimmy's move. I think Barry and Stefanski both wanted him and were both very interested in bringing him in. And I think they're smart guys, and I don't want to let them pretend oh, they're just, little puppets of Jimmy Haslam. I think they know what they're doing. And, part of that is that they're going to have to take the brunt of criticism then too, for it not going well, because this was a move, that they wanted to make. My only thing I can think of on why Kevin is continuing to do this is that he ripped up his entire offensive coaching staff to fit what he thought Watson needed and could be, and is let me just try a little bit longer with this new staff, this new way of thinking that we've tried to bring in with Dorsey and, all of the other guys they brought in. And that could be a reason why he's taking a little bit longer. But I mean, everything you said, I'm they're all the data's there. There is no reason for him to continue. It's not helping him. It's not making him look any better. And, even though he has that extension, like you said, they could still fire him. Him playing Deshaun Watson right now will give him a greater chance of getting fired, it feels like, than if he were to try to win with someone else. So I am really at a loss for why it is, and the rest of the staff is the only thing I could think of for why he's at least pushing it a little bit longer before he makes a move.
Yeah, because it's a referendum on everything they did in the offseason, right?
Yep.
If you sit him down, because he had a say, Watson had a say in this offense. He
Yep.
helped construct it. He was there with Dorsey, Tommy Reese, Charlton, all these guys they brought in who weren't really Stefanski's guys,
Yep.
right? And to try to make it work, and I guess you're admitting defeat, so
Yeah.
it's a good point. But I think my thing is with I just think more of Kevin to think that he would think of the locker room first. You know what I mean?
Agree.
Like, and I hate what they're running right now. Like, I hate it. Like, and it's certainly it's a mix of some of Kevin, some of Dorsey, but like,
right.
What they're running right now, they're not good at. They don't execute it well.
Yeah.
So I think their best chance of winning. Listen, I know this about Jameis. He will get the ball out quickly. Like
100%.
he might throw picks, but he'll get it out quickly. He can process the field.
Yeah.
He'll stand tall in the pocket and try to complete passes. And that's more than what we're getting right now. And
yeah, I mean, on like another, it might not be the level of production we got from Joe Flacco, but that's similar from what we expected from him. Like, you're going to see the interceptions, you're going to see those moments, but he was able to process, get the ball out quickly. The offensive line wasn't that much better last year. Like, the offensive line still struggled last year. They were able to find success overall as an offense because of what Joe was able to do and getting the ball out so quickly. So I think you're 100%
Absolutely.
right. The fact that Jameis is able to do that would change so much of what we're seeing.
Yeah, and the fact, I mean, all these people nationally saying, why aren't they going to Winston? It's like, I don't know.
I know.
I don't know.
I was reading some Ken Dorsey quotes yesterday from the preseason, just trying to like get into their minds of like what they've been thinking. And he was talking a lot about how obviously they were, changing the offense to fit more of what Deshaun does well, and everything he listed that Deshaun does well, he currently does not do well. So that's part of why it's not working well, is because those qualities he no longer possesses. But one of the things that he did say multiple times in all of it was like, it's going to be rough the first few weeks of the season until they get into a rhythm of things, something to that effect, on like, don't expect things to look pretty until we get a little bit deeper. So I wonder if that thought process as well is also something that they talked about all off season that is in Stefanski's head, where he's like, okay, we didn't expect this to look great right away. So maybe if I give it a few more weeks, we start to see glimmers of it. But I can't imagine he expected it to look this bad, especially since you're not seeing those intangibles that the quarterback used to have that he just doesn't have anymore.
Abby, they have some of these stats. The Browns have played the easiest pass defense is year to date in the entire NFL.
Yeah.
32nd. Here's Dorsey's quote from today, which drove me insane. I don't know why this drove me so insane, but like, this isn't an answer to me, right? Like, the only way to get through tough times in life is to work. We're going to grind. We're going to grind. They're going to grind, Abby.
Yeah. It's like disrespectful at this point to like.
That is disrespectful.
Fans are smart too. Like, you can't keep saying these things to this fan base and expect them to just continue on. And I mean, you brought this up too. It's disrespectful to the veterans in the locker room. Like, I have to imagine so many of those guys, especially the ones who have been around the Browns for a long time, are sitting there like, they don't even want to give it their all, because why would they, knowing that this is the products that they're getting out on the field? Like, even if they're not going out there and intentionally playing worse because of it, because I think most guys in general are like, I'm going to go out and play hard. They're not like, I'm going to go out and throw this game. I think
Right.
even if you have a 1% difference in how you're playing because you just don't have a belief in your quarterback and in your team, like that's going to show. And it's probably shown in some of the penalties or the drops or those little tiny things that you need to do right are showing up because they don't believe in what they're seeing out there.
Yeah. In things I think I know, the article I wrote a couple weeks ago, like something is wrong with this team that we can't see, right? Like, I don't think you were on when I talked about it
I
with
don't
Quincy,
think
but
so.
like there's an underlying, at the time, I was just saying, listen, it's not a coincidence that all these individual talented players are all playing poorly at the same time. There's an underlying issue that we can't see or define because we're not there every day.
Yeah.
That is wrong with this group, right? Like that, it's the same personnel as last year, but last year they played with heart and passion, and they played for each other, and there was buy-in, and
Yeah.
through most of the whole season, right? Like even when Deshaun was playing, I felt like they were bought in, right?
Yeah.
And just think of the Ravens game, for example, right? I always say my favorite moment of last season was, DTR crying after the Steelers game and Emerson
Yeah.
getting down in his face, and like,
Yeah.
it's like
Or
so many good moments from that
yeah.
team. There's none of that. Like
Yeah.
they're lifeless. They don't have an identity. They look like a bunch of individuals out there and not a team.
Yeah.
Um,
Even in that Ravens game that you just brought up, that play with Dave Njoku when like the entire team got behind him and pushed him, like you wouldn't see that roster right now doing that for any, like that's just not happening. That mindset isn't there.
yeah, and it's so there's something missing. There's something off. There's something wrong, right? And that's I said I can't define it, but there's some. It could be him.
Yeah.
It could be four. It could
Yeah.
just be there's no belief. He's not acting like a leader. At least I don't see him acting like a leader.
Yeah.
Um, your backup quarterback gives your pregame
Yeah.
speeches, and he's nowhere to be found. To Casey's pointed this out, like he's not even in the screen when it's happening. Like weird, right? Like,
It's
and
strange. That is a really strange thing to see.
it's so bizarre, and it's like now he's getting surly and arrogant with the press, and
Yeah. Saying that he doesn't read anything online, which he does, and everyone knows that he does. Like I mean, all of this should have been honestly a bigger sign in the preseason with the way a lot of the media was talking about how things were going in camp. And I at the time was kind of like, I don't know how much of this is real and
yep,
what people are seeing. They, some of the national media members are there for a day. They could have seen a bad day where things weren't going well. And like that very
we
much
had this
happened.
conversation back then, I think.
Yeah, and it's like I didn't want to buy into it too much because I do think sometimes those things get blown out of proportion, but sitting here today you're kind of like, okay, maybe there was something to all of that like that actually does mean something that if those players are seeing things in the preseason and in training camp and OTAs that they're like this guy doesn't have it, like that affects things over time to get to us to where we are today.
To your point, I just wrote this. I see if I can bring it up while we're talking about it. So in once again in the article I write things I think I know this week, I wrote that I thought that the preseason, exactly what you just said, should have
Yeah.
been a sign that this was to come, right? And I took a quote from Stefanski after their joint practices
Oh boy.
with Minnesota. Um, Tell me if this sounds familiar, right?
I'm
Like,
scared.
yeah, it's crazy. Like, yeah, so unusual offseason was a sign of things to come for this offense. Um, and here, Stefanski had this to say after the first day of joint practices. We need to be way better offensively from an operations standpoint. That was not good. Some of it was the cadence, some penalties, some weren't false starts. Some of them were that the tackles were aligned too deep at times. So those are all things that are correctable, and we will correct them. Not a great day from our pass protectors, but more from a miscommunication standpoint.
I
Sounds
mean, it sounds
eerily
like the same thing
familiar.
he's saying every single week as we've gone throughout the season, which is so frustrating because so many of those are just fundamentals too. Like this isn't like complicated stuff they need to fix. This is things that they know. And this is another thing I've been having a hard time with people wanting to put more blame on Stefanski. I don't think he's shouldn't have any blame. Like I very much think that a lot of parts of this team deserve blame and everything. But when it comes to some of the penalties and the fundamentals that guys are screwing up, I have a hard time putting that on the head coach. These guys have been playing football their entire lives. They know what they need to do. They know what their job is. And week in and week out, they're making the same mistakes. Like, I don't know how Kevin himself is supposed to fix all of that. People are always talking about like coaches need to have you prepared. And I never quite know what that means to everyone because I feel like it's just a statement that people make and a way that
Yeah.
coaches can take accountability and blame off of their players so that they're not like, oh yeah, it was his fault. They're like, no, that's on me. Like I should have my guys ready and prepared. Like these guys know what they're doing. They know what their
Yeah.
job is. They're not children. Like they can handle it. So I've been really struggling with some of that too, because I do think a lot more of that falls on the players than people want to give them credit for.
100%. Individually, offensively and defensively, we've watched individuals just do dumb things,
Mhm.
fail, take bad angles, not tackle well, not hold, jump off sides, not get set before the snap. I mean, it's just it's they're mental. It feels like they're all mentally checked out, and they've been checked out, or they've never been mentally been in.
Yeah.
And I I don't know. It can't all be Kevin's fault, um, because some of that is just on being a professional. To your
Yeah.
point,
Yeah.
right? Like, and so the only way forward for me, and we'll finish up with this. It's you've got to go to Winston.
Yeah.
I think you've got to change the offense a little bit. You don't have to overhaul it, but like I think you've got to kind of turn back into more under center, more traditional Stefanski
Yeah.
stuff, play action, especially as you get Nick Chubb back, depending on what version of
True.
Nick Chubb we get, right? So, but like Inheem Hines, right? So if you pivot back into that a little bit, right? And let Winston try to be this year's version of Flacco, kind of. But knowing that he'll get the ball out quickly. I went through the data. I won't do it now on things on All Eyes on Cleveland. Too many shows. All Eyes on Cleveland. The react on the Browns separation. Like I've heard people blaming the wide receivers. Oh, they're not fast enough to run the scheme, or they're not separate. No, they're separating. They're all three of their wide receivers are in the top 75 in separation in the NFL. Cooper's 20, Judy's 42. He's ahead of guys like Nico Collins and stuff like that. And Elijah Moore's like 72, but he's in the top 75. I mean,
Yeah.
that's not it. They're open. They get separation.
Yeah.
So if you put Winston in, and you give him easy answers or quick release stuff, despite how bad the offensive line is, he's going to do better than they're doing now.
Yep.
Especially if you kind of, you don't have to fully do it. You can still run some of the Dorsey stuff, but I'd like to see them, even though it's a referendum on everything they do this offseason, turn back into what Stefanski knows and does. Is probably better off that he's calling plays that he's called for the last 4 years and they've had some success with
Yep.
than calling this iteration of the offense,
Hmm.
which doesn't really even seem close to having a chance.
Yeah.
I just think, Winston under center, hard play action, try to run the ball, work Nick Chubb back in. Just having Winston and Chubb out there, I think in itself will get you at least a momentary week or two lift of
Yeah.
morale and boost for the team. Even if it's artificial and for a couple weeks,
Yeah.
if you do it now, at least it's before you're completely out of it and you see what you got there. Like,
Yeah.
you got to do it. You have
Yeah.
to, you owe it to your team to do it. So the only thing I can think of is they're waiting one more week.
Yeah. I mean, that's the only thought, is that like they're waiting through this like stretch of being away. They haven't been home since week 3, that they're like, okay, on the road, we continue as is. But when we come home against the Bengals, this decision might be made then. But I mean, even at that, it's like, why, what's the point in waiting? It's like, you
There's no
gotta
point.
bite the bullet at some point, because to your point, once it's too far gone, you don't get a true look at Jameis Winston as a quarterback to see if he could be the future for you, because the team is not going to be mentally there if like the season is that far gone. Like it's deeper into it. How do you even get a look to see if you have something in Jameis? So yeah, I'm with you.
Plus, people are getting injured every week.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
I mean, you got to do it. That's the only thing that I can think of, is that he's waiting just one more week until they go home. But if he goes out and whatever happens, I don't care if he goes out and throws for 400 yards. I've seen enough, Abby.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah.
Like,
I'm out.
yeah. And, going home, knowing the scene you could potentially create there, if Jimmy was dictating anything, you would think he would be dictating that they take him out at this point. He doesn't.
Right.
Like, you want to build a dome in Brook Park, you can't have an ugly scene like this at
God.
home. Your season ticket holders, people throwing stuff on the field, like, it could get really bad and be
Yeah.
really embarrassing. And that just makes the entire thing worse. You
Mm-hmm.
have to avoid that situation at all costs. So
Yeah.
I got to think they make a change. It's insane to me if they try to go home with him as the starter.
Yeah, I mean, it's because it benefits 0 people. Like, the only person it benefits is Deshaun Watson if he wants to continue to play, which at this point, it's not really benefiting him either, because
It
he's
doesn't
not doing so
benefit
hot
him.
out
No.
there. So I
Yeah.
don't know who this is doing anything good for. But yeah, I mean, I think a couple weeks ago on this show, when Quincy did his little presentation breakdown of when they were going to do it, he had mentioned when they come home from this away stretch, that would be an opportune time to do it. And it feels like that could be in Kevin's head. I also think, when he's saying to the media, like, I haven't thought about benching him, like, I don't know what people expect him to say, because of course he's going to say that until he makes the choice. He's not going to like let everyone in on like, yeah, I'm thinking about it,
I'm
and
thinking about
I'm
it. Yeah, no.
considering benching him. Like, he's not going to say that. When
Yeah.
the move is being made, we'll know it's happening. It's done. It's over with. So just for everyone watching, just know if it happens in Philly this week, just picture me. I will be screaming my head off in that stadium, the happiest I could ever be. So I'm hoping for that to carry me through the weekend.
I think I'm going to go make free Jameis t-shirts right now. So,
Love it. Love it.
All right. Great job, Abby, as always. Tough times right now, but just trying to make sense of what's going on. I agree with you. You got to wait for the right guy. You can't force it in the draft, because you need more than just a quarterback. And teams around the league are proving to you right now that you can do it with a bridge and be successful, especially with scoring down and everything down. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
and
Teams all over are doing it. Some of the top teams in the league right now don't have the Patrick Mahomes as quarterback.
Yep. And Stefanski is the guy of anybody that can bring that out in a mediocre quarterback, right? So the worst thing that I would hate to see him do is keep going down this path and end up not being here past this year. I think that would be a colossal failure.
Yep.
Despite I know a lot of people have pitchforks and torches for Stefanski and Barry, but
Yes.
I think that the best way forward is with them.
Agreed.
All right. Let's get out of here. Have fun in Philly. I'm be excited
Thank
to
you.
hear what you say about the
Yeah.
fans there. I know some Philly fans myself, so should be fun.
Yeah.
All right. Keep it locked at the OBR as we go into a football weekend. Browns in Philly. Abby Mueller, boots on the ground, will be there. Go follow her on Twitter at Abby_Mueller_. Great job tonight, Abby. My name is Brad Ward. Keep it locked at the OBR. This has been another edition of Things I Think I Know. We are out.